All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of I Care About Books. I am joined by two of my very favorite fellow readers, Graham McGaugh, founder of booknotification.com, and Vince, how do I say your last name? Because I want to say Morale, but I don't know if that's right.
Is Morales. Vince
Morale.
Morales.
Okay, so I was close. I just call him Vince for all intents and
Yeah,
purposes.
that's fine.
Vince is our entertainment editor for Book Notification. You can check out his podcast. We publish that every weekend with new and upcoming books that are, ones that you're going to want to check out. Plus, on top of that, Vince also takes care of weekly picks where he goes through and gives you some ideas and some suggestions right ahead of your weekend for great reading material. So welcome to you both. And tonight we are talking about the Poisonwood Bible. My goodness. So, gentlemen, we were all doing this together about a month ago. So the way that this is going to work is we will just discuss at length. I want to make sure that we're saying that, yes, we are going to have some spoilers. That's the purpose of our book club, is to talk about the book at length. No topic is off limits. And if there are spoilers, no worries about that. And at the end, we will rank this out of bells.
Yes, 10 bells.
10 bells. All right, let's start with you, Graham. I know we talked a little bit about this as we were both chugging along reading this book. It was recommended to us by my cousin Angela, who is a librarian from Ottawa, Canada. And Graham, what'd you think of the Poisonwood Bible?
Best way to do it is this right here. This is my cup of tea. This right here, not my cup of tea. It's a Pulitzer Prize finalist. It's an award winner. It's a beautiful book. It's very well written. There's a lot to it. It's a masterpiece in some ways. Not for me though.
Not for you.
Sorry, Angela. I'm glad she's not here right now, actually, because I think she'd be tearing lumps off me. So
she's in France, so I'm sure she'll get a kick out of listening to this afterwards, because she was very quick on the draw to recommend this book to the book club.
Well, she's in France, so she'll probably be calling me less than incompetent.
Yes, exactly. We're gonna get into why, Graham, it wasn't your cup of tea, but first, Vince, tell me, what did you think?
I did end up liking it quite a bit. I'll say this about the book, and I think this is probably going to end up being part of Graham's reasoning. I think Graham and I both read the same way, where we treat it like a meal and finish as fast as we can, or like a beer and drink it as fast as we can. And this is like wine. Like, you gotta like sip it and enjoy it over a long period of time. And because I don't read that way, it was a little difficult, because I read and binge read, sort of. But despite that, like, I do like a lot of themes. There's parts that honestly had me like tearing up a little bit. We can get to that, but I do think it was a very good book. Very good.
I have an issue with that. I have an issue with that analogy, because when I drink wine, I don't really like the taste. I just chug it even faster. So, and I didn't treat the book this way. I took my time with it, and I did. It was a bit long read. 3 weeks it took me to finish it completely, and I did read people say it is a slow read. It's a study, which I understand. So.
Yeah, it was a long book. This book clocks in at about 500, I'm going to say 73 pages, 543 pages. That's an intense novel. It's also broken into 7 books, which I don't know people realize right from the hop when they're taking a look at this, because it is all one story. But the way that Barbara Kingsolver has written the book, it's actually broken down into 7 books over the time of this family's experience being in Congo as missionaries back in the 50s. So let's get into just quickly the explanation of the book, so that people understand what's going on in this particular story. The Poisonwood Bible, when you first hear it, you're not sure if it's got a religious connotation to it, if that's sort of a metaphor, and I guess the answer would be both. So essentially, in this particular story, Nathaniel Price is a preacher from Georgia, and he and his family are going over to the Congo as missionaries. This all takes place in 1959. The idea being that they'll be there for a year, and they'll be headed home right afterwards as the next family sort of moves in. But if you know your history, that was around the time that the Republic of Congo received their independence from Belgium. So they were right there in the thick of this political climax without even realizing it. And as they are in the Congo and they're starting to try and acclimate to this new country, what happens is there is this big political climax in the middle of the story that they're trying to navigate as well, and becomes a lot of I want to say like Nathaniel Price is a complicated character. The father, the patriarch, the gentleman who has gone over there to minister, a Baptist minister, right in the thick of the Congolese people, and he becomes a zealot. I guess is probably the best way to describe him. Would you guys agree to that?
For sure, he's really the Poisonwood in the title. He's toxic, he's unbending, that type of thing. So he is, and he went over there already a bit crazy, and he just got worse. He wouldn't listen to anything. With the whole them not wanting to be baptized because a kid got eaten by a crocodile in the water and stuff. He didn't care. He still was like, no, right? So yeah, he was quite the character, and he got worse as the book went on. It seemed as blind faith personified, and he just got even more rigid as it went on.
And as the family learns about this political uprising that's happening in Congo, they are advised to leave the country and go back to America. And Nathaniel Price is saying no. His work is not done yet, and he won't leave until he feels that his missionary work is completed, and that much obviously comes to the chagrin of his wife and his 4 daughters, who are anxious to leave, who feel that they are not acclimating to the village. They're not welcomed, and they want to get out of there. And the book is told from the perspective of each of the women of this family. So their mom and the 4 daughters. And I thought that was a really interesting way of telling the story, because I really felt from the get-go we understood these characters. And what I loved about how Barbara Kingsolver wrote them, they stayed true and authentic to themselves from the beginning of the book right through to the very end. I found that even as the girls matured and became young women, and then became mothers and so on, that their personalities were the same throughout each of their sort of entries into the book. What did you think about that?
Yeah, there's character growth with some of the girls, but yeah, they're ultimately always themselves. Like for Rachel, it's to her detriment. In the end, she has a very unfulfilling life. She basically becomes her father, but like instead of worshiping the Bible, she just worships herself or money or whatever it is.
Yeah, her vanity, absolutely.
But yeah, they all of them, they do stay true. Leah and Ada, and I think in ways their focuses change, but they are always themselves.
Yeah, there was no. I like that because it was accurate to the way life is at times, where there was no big redemption arc or changes, things like that. Like Ada was probably the one who changed the most, but she was mostly evolving quietly out of nowhere. While Rachel, she was always vain, selfish, never self-reflective. That never changed throughout. While the others did have a little bit more character growth, but Rachel, that type of person, usually doesn't change. And she just got exactly the same as time went on. I did enjoy, she was on a third husband and a 4th husband, all that, and I thought that was kind of entertaining, just seeing how she turned out, just the same person but older.
And I thought it was really interesting. I thought they did a great job of the sort of culture shock. Like I thought Barbara Kingsolver really wrote excellent narrative when it came to the girls and their culture shock. That sort of whitewashing that we experience in North America and what our outwardly views are of other countries. It may not even just be an African country, any country from around the world. We have such a North American tunnel vision. And I thought when the girls arrived in Congo and they were meeting the villagers and they were so culture shocked, and it was so encapsulated so well, each from the perspectives of each of these daughters who varied in age from 16. Leah and Ada are twins, so they're both 15, and even right down to little Ruth May, who was only 5. Their experiences of coming into the village for the very first time with this very, very clear tunnel vision, I thought was really interesting. And also from coming from a southern state in the 50s, that also played a role in what they experienced when they arrived in Congo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Barbara
go ahead, Graham.
I was going to say Barbara did an incredible job at that, where like she managed to encapsulate. And honestly, that might be one of the reasons I didn't like the book as much, because I'm not big into, I don't like history and things like that. And this read almost like a non-fiction book, you know, like and I don't like history, what can I say, you know, unless it's but it read like almost like a non-fiction book, which I usually don't enjoy. And so I think that was actually part of it, because reading this, it didn't feel like a fiction piece. It felt like memoirs of something actually happened, you know. So that's where, again, while I didn't enjoy it, I can say I admired how she wrote that. I thought she did a fantastic job of all that, like encapsulating how they felt going in there. And you're right, trying to deal with the culture, all the changes, and it was just crazy how intense and different it was. So,
yeah, there's a lot of references early to like Jim Crow and like the town they live in Georgia. I believe they live in Georgia, or do they live in Mississippi? What? I think they live, whatever. Yeah. Same diff. But they, you know, like the town they live in, like blacks and whites are separated. Blacks don't go to their church. They're not allowed. They have their own church. But then somehow this preacher thinks, like, yeah, I don't want them coming to my church where I live, but I'm going to go to another country and save them. That just like proves how insane he is. But then to go to Africa with those kind of thoughts in your head, and there's so much of like the culture shock, but also so much the things that they think are a culture shock to them, they're culture shocking the people in the village so much worse, and they're like offending them left and right, and they don't even know it. They don't have any clue for, you know, 2/3 of the book. They don't have a clue that they're being so offensive, that they're being, you know, basically spitting on the ground.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, I thought that was really well illustrated in this book, is they're so ignorant. This family is so ignorant, and they arrive in this country that's not theirs with this God complex that they're going to, you know, just tell everybody what they believe is wrong, and they've got to do it their way, or they're not. It was just impossible to me to get my mind wrapped around the idea that that was why they were there. And it wasn't even so much because I believe, you know, in the idea that people should be able to be missionaries, should be able to spread the word of whatever faith that they may have anywhere around the world. But it was the idea that Nathaniel Price was convinced they were wrong. There was no room in his mind that this culture didn't need him. That was the part that really, really stood out to me, was that he was so convinced that his way was the only way. There was no room. There was no room when he got there. What do you think, Graham?
Yeah, he wasn't even like, we talked about development earlier. He had no real character development. He was just a symbol of central hate, and that just grew as the book went on. You're right, he was just adamant things were going to be his way, and he just kept pushing it no matter what, and he wouldn't even listen to reason or debate. He was just blinkers on, you know, and I thought they did a great job of describing him about the girl's perspective of him and how they reacted, and even just how casually they mentioned that he would beat them, basically, you know, and like they just did a very good job, just really making you hate him.
There is one scene towards it, like in about the middle of the book, where they're after their mom. I'm trying not to do some like spoilers. I talk about how we're going to give spoilers away.
Spoil it all.
We're spoiling.
Ruth dies. Ruth dies. There you go.
But before that, but when Nathaniel Price decides that the family will not be going back to the U.S., despite them being encouraged to leave, this is where his wife goes into sort of like a catatonic state, and she's not, able to move. She's in bed for a few weeks. Their youngest is curled up in bed with her. But there is this scene where Nathaniel comes home and he's so pissed off that the three other girls haven't made him dinner yet. It's implied that he beats the girls. And the way that Barbara writes this narrative is she says that the girls, he came home and he was so irate that they compared bruises later. And that's all she had to say to, and to me, that was really illustrative of like just how the girls have come to accept that their father is like this, that it didn't even need to be said. They just compared their bruises later. What did you think to that, Vince?
Yeah, he's a monster. He's a monster. There is a part where his background, where he was in the war, and he's the only surviving guy of his whole platoon, and then he spends his whole life trying to make up for that by saving that many souls. I think it's 8 of this says like, or he'll never be able to save enough souls to like make up for what he thinks he did. But he's so blinded he can't even see in front of his own children, his own wife, like the way they think of him, the way that they're moving away from God, which is supposedly his whole thing. He's just he's the most lost of them all, and he becomes like the first half of the book. I was texting Graham and I was saying, I hate this guy. I hate this. And by the end, I can't even like enjoy his fate. It's just like, you just feel sorry for him. He's just like pathetic.
Right. Yeah. The redemption arc. There's no redemption arc for him.
But what about when they think the lion's eating Ruth May and he's just like, okay. My youngest got eaten.
Right.
Okay. It was all God's plan. Oh, good. That was, if you were on the fence with him early on, that kind of cemented your thoughts on him right there, I think.
Right. It was actually with Ada that was near what they thought.
Sorry.
But I'm glad you brought this up, because you actually, when we were talking about spoilers, did reference that the littlest, Ruth May, does die while they're in the Congo. And since you brought it up, Graham, I'll let you go ahead and explain what happens in this part of the story.
Yes, there was a snake placed into who's the character's where he was staying again. Anyway, a snake was placed in, and it ended up biting Ruth, and she ended up dying from it. And then that might be where Vince cried. I didn't cry, but Vince might have cried at that.
That was a great summary. That was
Thanks. Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Snake bit up, dead. That's it. I'm just like the dad, I guess. Nathan, I'd say, oh, she's dead. Move on with life.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes that happen is that
but it's Leah.
Leah wants to hunt. Leah wants to hunt.
That.
Half the village doesn't want her to. They vote on it, and then this quote unquote witch doctor, he's so mad about it that he places snakes in their
Anatoly, that was his name, where he was staying and he was scared. And yes, they placed a snake in there intended for Anatoly, on Anatole. And
for Nelson, actually.
Oh, well, there we go. But anyway, that was where they discovered it, and then they placed the trap around to see who it was. found the 6 toes, but then yeah, the snake got Ruth, and rest in peace, Ruth May.
Well, this is it, because this book is very convoluted. There's a lot to this story. So in summary, what's happened is midway through this book, midway through this time the Price family is living in this village, the village really rises up and says, we're done with you. Like this doesn't make any sense. We don't want you here trying to preach to us and tell us what we know to be true is in fact wrong. And once they overthrow Nathaniel at the church by having a vote, then they decide that they are going to gather up all the villagers and they're going to go on a hunt. And this is the only way to try and save everybody from starvation, is to try and gather everybody in the village, whether or not they want to be a part of this hunt. And Leah, one of Nathaniel's daughters, wants to be in this hunt. And it is just not acceptable for a woman to want to be a part of the hunt with the men, where she's actually going to have a weapon and be a part of it. And so anyhow, they get pissed off. And in order to deflect her from coming, they plant this snake, and it ends up killing the youngest child in the family. While we're talking about Ruth May, I did want to ask you both this. She's only 5. Out of all of the entries from the variety of characters who reread the story through their version, I thought Ruth May seemed a little too in tune. Like 5 is young. I mean, Graham, you're a parent. Vince, I'm not sure if you are. I am. But 5 is really young to be kind of having. I thought maybe she should have been like 8 or 9 to be really able to tell the story the way that she was through her lens. Seemed a little more advanced than perhaps maybe I would have taken a 5-year-old to be. What do you think, Vince?
I don't know. Because a lot of her, like maybe it's hyped up a little bit or pumped up a little bit just for the reader, but I think most of her like internal thoughts there's a lot of rumor in there, a lot of just like things you thought you understood, and you, like, for example, like Jim Crow, she calls it, she thinks that Jimmy Crow is a guy who's in charge of like race relations in the US or something, like, or in her town. So it's like, I think for the most part, maybe the writing is probably, too good for a 5-year-old, but I think the thoughts are proper 5-year-old thoughts.
All right.
She might not be the ultimate, like the ultra realistic 5-year-old, but I think she plays the role of the family conscience, and so she might seem a little bit older at times. I do remember there was a few times during the book where I was reading it, and I'd get a chapter and I would go forward a page, then I'd have to go back because I'm like, wait, is this Leah? And then but actually it was Ruth May, and I'm like, okay. So I could definitely see that, but yeah, I think she was used for that role as a conscience, basically, and that was it.
That is a really cool interpretation of Ruth May's sort of role within the family, to be the conscience, because she's the innocent, right? She's the one that doesn't understand anything about necessarily religion or culture, and they talk so much about how she was able to integrate with the village children, and she was able to like speak with them and play games with them and learn their language on such a different level than the rest of the family when they were trying to integrate into the village. And I also enjoyed that at the last chapter of the book is taken from Ruth May's perspective, despite the fact that she's dead.
Yeah.
Like,
so
fair
way to end it.
Very reflective in that
way. Fair
way.
way to end it, because everyone is, they spend the rest. I mean, this happens in the middle of the book, and the rest of the book is them being haunted by it. So, like, the fact that she can come in at the end, say, like, hey, you guys, pat him on the head, basically say, it's all right, I forgive you, I love you, whatever.
So, Graham, when we chatted about with Percival Everett last time, there was a section of the book in Erasure that I think all 3 of us sort of glossed over. But when you and I were texting about this particular book, you said you can't skim it. And I was wondering if you wanted to sort of elaborate on that and the pacing of this book. And did you think that it was the appropriate length for the story it was trying to tell?
The pacing was a bit odd, I found. I was fine. Well, I was fine with a very slow pace in the beginning when we were in Congo and everything. I thought that was good, and there's lots of layers to it and everything. And like even when we were talking about the death of Ruth May, you have to jump back a whole sequence of events to build to that, right? So there was so many layers, so much to go. So I thought the pacing was good. It definitely not something you can skip. Yeah, like you have to take it slow and read. Like I read it over the course of 3 weeks. Part of it was because I wasn't into it, but it wasn't. It's not an easy read, you know. It's like you really do have to take time to reflect on each of it and so on. But I did think after they left Congo, the pacing got a little bit crazy. Like I was kind of messaging Vince today, but I was saying like because it would jump from each point of view, but it would be like 2 years later, 3 years later, you know. So and I could see why the author did that. I just didn't. I didn't like that part where it jumped to Rachel and she's talking about how her third husband just died, and I'm like, you know, wait, there was no second husband, now there's a third. And so I thought it was a little bit off, where I thought the pacing for the first 60% of the book, slow pace and everything, was very good. But I wasn't a big fan of how it moved really fast. It felt like all the ants came, they got cleared out the village, and that was just boom, let's jump as fast as we can to the end.
Right. What did you think, Vince? Did you find that it was almost a little disjointed, that at the beginning it took a long time to get through 6 months of living in the village, and then all of a sudden the back half of the books scales across a couple of decades?
Yeah, I'll say just kind of how I said in the beginning, like it's kind of like wine, or it's like what the real analogy is like, it's not one season of a TV show, it's not one movie, it's like a Ken Burns documentary where each episode is like 3.5 hours long and there's like 5 of them. You can't just sit down and watch all those, you know. You have to, like, there's a reason stuff used to come on once a week. And I think if I were to reread this book, I would read like book 1.
Okay.
And then I would maybe read a different book, and then I would read book 2. Like, because I think it's just so much. It's just so much to take in. Where, you know, maybe that's that's an issue with me, is like how I read things. But I did. I think I enjoyed the I think they call it the Exodus. You know, their adult lives. I think I enjoyed that a lot more than maybe Graham did, but because there's a lot of just, you know, that's how life goes. Like when you're young, you remember everything, and when you're old, you know, there's just like events, you know.
All right, Graham, favorite character in the book? Someone that like resonated with you? Was there one that you were like, I really love this particular character?
Nathan, yes, the dad. I was like, I was like, wow, this could be me. It's like she's writing about me. No, I think I did enjoy him. I gotta say, I mean, there was a lot of good characters in the book. I think the character I did enjoy reading the most, from her point of view, was Rachel, though, just because I liked the character she was, not as a person, obviously, but I just enjoyed reading about her the most. So Rachel, I think, would be the one, and both in the Congo and afterwards, I enjoyed her story.
Okay. What about you, Vince? Favorite character in the book?
I don't think it's even close. I think it's Ada.
Yeah.
Such a unique character. The fact that she doesn't talk at the beginning, but she's clearly the smartest of all of them by far. Like, she sees so many things that nobody else does, and she like learns the language, but because she doesn't speak, it doesn't do them any good. And she like sees through her dad's BS, like way before the book even starts, probably. And then you know, as she gets older, and everything that happens, how they solve her limp, which was never real, and becomes a doctor, and she learns to just become a part of the world, where in the beginning she was very much outside the world. She existed in her own world. I just think it's a really nice arc and a really interesting character. And some of the palindromes, I don't know if you caught this, like she would have like a palindrome that was like 8 words long, and I'd be like, "This is a weird. That's a weird sentence." And I'm like, "Oh my god, she's doing it." Like I would just look at the words and be like, "Wait a minute, that's NET at the end or whatever."
I absolutely did that. Had to go back and read it backwards because I was like, oh, I get it. I get what's happening here. It's funny. I feel like I have to like pick a different character because I wasn't expecting Graham to say Rachel because that was who I really resonated with throughout the book. I really loved how Rachel just in my world just she seems so real to me. Maybe because I'm from North America, so I can imagine what that must have felt like as a 16-year-old going against your will to somewhere else in the culture shock that she was experiencing. And so I just really resonated with Rachel's sort of story. Like I really kind of felt like I understood her, especially when they were standing there. There's a scene where her mother is at the river with the former missionary that had lived in their home, and he's there with his wife, and they've got all of these stocks and items and things like that they're giving everybody to give them a hand while they're in the village. And anyhow, she says she's looking at his wife with her eyes, hoping she can sense that she needs to leave. Like she's trying to send subliminal messages with her eyes saying, help me, get me out of here. And I read that line and I felt so real. Like I was like, oh, I get what she feels in this moment.
And it was things like when she initially is in that relationship with the pilot Axelroot is a convenience, but reading it, what that's going to end up with. It's going to end up with her together. And so it's just, it was very enjoyable seeing that happen. Like I said, she was a very realistic character. She was one I most looked forward to. And yeah, she would fall into those traps. She was like, this only convenience, no way. And then next thing you know, they're kissing out in the woods and all that. And so, yeah, she would, Ada was 100% great character in terms of how she developed and all that. I completely get that. Close second to Rachel.
And I have to add, just as sort of quick commentary here, Leah, the other twin, did you not notice that she was extraordinarily maternal from the very beginning, that her story in the end, like it was so predictable? Did either of you find that? Like, I mean, in the very beginning, she was close to her father. So she's like the first one to find a soulmate, to like actually get married to. Like she was looking for that sort of male substitute for her father in her life. And then she names her children after all of these characters that they'd come to know. But in the very beginning of the book, she was the one that was responsible for Ruth May. She was brushing her hair, keeping her occupied, and so on. I think that Leah, unsurprisingly, ended up being that maternal one throughout the story. What do you guys think?
Yeah, she it's not even not only just like maternal, it's just like she feels the most guilt of everybody, and it's partially probably because she stays there, and then she'll just always be white, and to certain people she'll always look like the enemy. But yeah, like I think she felt very maternal over Ruth May, and so she had even more guilt because I believe she's the one that's frozen when they say, go get this person, they know what they can help. And she just is frozen and it's too late. Yeah, I did really like Leah, though. I think she would probably be my number 2 favorite character in this book. Because she's goes through the most, and she has like the strongest like ideology of all of them. Like it starts off being the strongest in her faith, and then when her faith is crushed, she replaces that faith with Anatole and with like a sense of justice for the people around her and her family.
Totally. All right, we're at that time of the podcast, gentlemen. Graham, what would you rank this book out of 10 bells?
Well, I think this book club podcast did help me back up what I said earlier, where I didn't enjoy reading it, but I do think it is a great study book. It's a great discussion book. I think it's taught in some schools give it as a summer reading quest, I think, which I think as a 10-year-old I'd been miserable with that, but it is what it is. I think it's a great piece to discuss and chat about and things like that. So I do highly respect it, and I admire the book. And if someone gives it a 10 out of 10, I'd be like, completely understand. I get it. For me, 4 out of 10. Sorry.
What?
Sorry. Well, I don't want my book notification personal recommendations to be messed up. I don't want to say 10 out of 10 and then suddenly I'm getting recommended Crime and Punishment and stuff like this. I'm happy with, I don't want my Frida McFadden psychological thriller algorithm to be messed up. So 4 out of 10.
I feel like I need to get one of those like sound effects. It's like wah, wah,
Yeah.
to go in. All right, Vince, what did you think? Out of 10 bells.
I think I'm gonna go 8. I'm rarely a 10 guy. I'm rarely a 9 guy. I'm a solid 8. Mostly because it's a great book to think about. It was a hard book to read at times, but I feel better having read it. I'm glad I read it. Maybe someday I'll read it again when I have more free time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I think I wanted to go with 6, but I'll give it a strong 7. Because I wouldn't read it again.
Okay.
It was a one and done for me. I was like, yeah, I'm really glad that that's among the list of books that I can say that I've read, but it's not going to be the one that I'm like, oh, I'm going to the beach for a week. I want to pick up a book and take it with me. That really, so I kind of a mix of both of you. With Vince saying, yeah, this is absolutely one of those books that I think everybody should read. But Graham, with what you're saying as well, it I don't know if I liked it. Like, I think liked it seems a little strong. Like, it was a great book, but did I like it? I don't know if that would be how I would explain this. I would say to somebody, you should read it. I don't know if I liked it.
I respect it. I admire it. I just don't personally like it. Now, would I read it again? Well, maybe if I read every other book in existence, I'll read it again. But other than that, no. But no, like I said, I do respect. I admire the book. The writing was fantastic. All that. I don't want my personal rating to take away from any of that. I think totally deserves to be a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Just my personal opinion was no, not for me, not my cup of tea, as I said.
I do have to just say, I think I said it already in this, but I'll say it again. The imagery is out of control. Like the illustration, like you really feel like you are sweating in the jungle and you are, infested in this hut with mosquitoes. Like it was the imagery for me really stood out from this book. So there's not a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of imagery, a lot of illustration. And I thought that part was magnificent if I was going to add anything to it. Now, that being said, we do have to assign our next challenge. So we have given that joy to Vince. What book should we read next?
It better not be another Barbara Kingsolver book.
No. I did just think that, I definitely wanted to pick something that I think we would all enjoy or that is well-known, well-reviewed. But I also wanted to pick something that was less than 300 pages. So my choice is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut Jr.
Yes.
Nice pick. Have you read this, Graham?
I actually don't think I have. I've read quite a few books by Kurt, but I don't think I actually read that one.
Yeah. I'm the same. I've read Breakfast of Champions, but I never read Slaughterhouse-Five, and it's always been on my to-be-read list, and now we're going to cross it off.
Oh,
I'm excited for that one. Oh, you froze there for a second. Okay, you froze there for a second, Kara.
All right, I'm back. Thank you to Graham and to Vince for being a part of the I Care About Books podcast. This we try to publish once a month, and basically all you got to do is pick up the book that is for our challenge and read along with us. And if you've got commentary or questions or just something cool you want to say about it, you can always email me at care@booknotification.com. As always, head on over to booknotification.com for everything books. Sign up, subscribe, and get notified. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Go Mariners.